Mom is correct. You actually are. And that was the last thing I heard from my daughter when I hung up. Oh, she tried to send me text messages over the next few days, but I simply erased them. There were even a couple of voicemails, which I deleted after hearing the first few sentences. It was all the same. These were my ex-wife's remarks, expressed in my daughter's voice. She made her decision 10 years ago and is now comfortable with it. The so-called AOL branch was simply an insult. So I'm Tom Williams. I was previously married to Kayla Williams. We had been married for around 17 years when everything went apart. Of course, they blamed me for it. This is what happens to the ignorant simpletons in our fantastic divorce courts in this nation. They blame the man and then give the ex-wife full custody so she can tell the children what a bad person their father is. I swear that the divorce rules in our nation were drafted by a group of man-hating feminists who wished to degrade anyone with a man's dignity. I mentioned that we had been married for 17 years. We have 2 children, a 14-year-old boy and a 16-year-old daughter. I thought things was going okay. I adored my wife and was confident that she loved me. Our children were clever, athletic, well-mannered, and attractive. Carly was a daddy's daughter, whereas Josh was a pleasant and athletic boy. I was making a decent living as a mechanical engineer, and Kayla was doing well as an accountant. We both played sports to stay healthy and were very attractive. As I previously stated, Carly was a daddy's girl through and through. She appeared to adore me, and I was wrapped around her little finger. She was good at math and science and decided to become an engineer like her father. She got her driver's license the day she turned 16. She, like myself, enjoyed driving from the age of 10. She would walk into the garage and bring me wrenches as I worked on the numerous toys I had purchased. I'm an unashamed tech enthusiast. I prefer old automobiles, particularly GMs, that I can tinker with and build. She also nurtured my affection for them. Some weekends, we would go to car events together and spend the entire day salivating over these incredible vehicles. It felt like we were together virtually every weekend. I was also quite good at doing domestic tasks. Carly was always eager to assist me with household chores. I taught her the fundamentals of plumbing, electrical, drywalling, and painting. She was at my side as I installed new appliances. She even helped me install a new concrete slab adjacent to my workshop. Although Carly looked to her mother for assistance on women's concerns, which I appreciated, she came to me for aid with everything else: homework, drama with girlfriends, suggestions on what she'll do, boys, and so on. We were really open and honest with one another while she was having problems. She looked to me for assistance. I was a daddy's girl, while Kayla was a mama's boy. Josh was never as interested in vehicles and mechanics as his older sister. He was a good student, but science didn't interest him much. He excelled at English literature and civics. He started discussing becoming a lawyer. Of course, Josh and I also spoke. We seemed more devoted to his mother than to me. Kayla appeared to be acting strangely over the last few weeks. Nothing extraordinary. She just appeared a little distant. And lately, she seemed to drift off for a minute or two. I questioned her a few times whether everything was all right, but she just brushed it off and ignored my concerns. I usually liked it when she told me off, but not this time. Again, nothing extraordinary, just slightly odd. It was Friday evening. I've just returned home from work. It was 6 p.m., as it always was when I arrived home on Friday nights. Kayla, as usual, was already home. I walked in the door shouting, "I'm home!" As usual, there were no scents of food being made. Also, Carly did not come down to greet me. Of course, she is already a teen, but she always greets me when she is at home. She and Josh must still be socializing with pals. So I left my briefcase at my office and walked upstairs to change into more comfortable clothes for the evening. When I entered the bedroom, I noticed my wife had laid out her LBD on the table. They wear a little black dress, lingerie, stockings, heels, and 6-inch CFM shoes. This explained the lack of fragrance at dinner. We apparently planned to go out tonight instead. I wish she'd informed me about this, but I still made no alternative plans. "Where do we go, darling?" I asked, starting to remove my shirt. "We're not going anywhere," she responded. It was bizarre. "So if we're not going anywhere, why did you put on makeup and arrange a hot clothing on the bed?" I said. "That's because we're not going anywhere. I'm leaving," she explained quietly. "Is this true? And where do you think you'll go in this attire without me? Also, where are the kids?" I had a horrible feeling. The kids spent the night with friends. I am not sure where my lover will take me, but I will most likely not be home till tomorrow early. What do you mean? You are a gentleman and you will not be returning till the morning. Exactly as I said. I have a date tonight, and if everything goes as planned, I'll spend the night with him, she explained quietly. You're nuts. What the hell makes you think I'd put up with this for a second? To hell with it all. If you want to go out and have fun, wait till the divorce is finalized. Stop being foolish. There will be no divorce. I'll just do it once and everything will be back to normal. I need this night. We've been married for 17 years, and I just need to go out once to show to myself that I'm still appealing to other men. If you truly love me, you will let me have this night, and it will not even appear on the radar. If you truly loved me, you wouldn't think about it. I adore you, but I need it. I'm getting older, and I want to feel like I'm still appealing to other men, especially for younger males. Clarence is around 10 years younger than myself. He'd been flirting with me for the past 6 months, and I finally agreed to accept his proposal. It only takes one night to convince myself that I am still a nice woman that attracts other men. For me, it's simply a confidence boost. I've noticed a few wrinkles and gray hairs beginning to show, and I need to boost my ego. I don't need this, and I won't put up with it. Do you recall the part of the wedding vows about abandoning all others? You do this, and you breach your vow. Do not be dumb. It is only for one night after going home. I pledge never to do this again. Are you a fool, or do you think I'm an idiot? After betraying the promise made to me in front of God, family, and friends. Do you really expect me to believe your modest pledge made in private? Simply said, if you do this, it is the end of our relationship. You walk out the door, and I will meet with the lawyer as soon as possible. Do not be an idiot. There will be no divorce. I'll return home and be the lovely, devoted wife I've always been. If you attempt to divorce me, I will fight as long and as hard as I can. As a result, you will lose your home and most of your belongings, and I will have complete custody of the children. Furthermore, I will do all in my power to disturb your visits, and I will hold you solely responsible for the family's breakdown. I will do everything it takes to make your children despise you. Her statements shocked me. You claim to love me, but you are willing to do all this to me. Damn right I will do it. I love you, but if you try to divorce me, I will fight back. I do not want to lose you. So I'm only explaining the repercussions of your behavior. Look, I told you I only needed one night to prove I was still gorgeous and hot. Yes, but what will happen in the next few years? What happens the next time you think you're getting older and wonder if you can still attract a younger man? Let me guess. According to the chatter around Cooler, he is an excellent lover. I bet he spent the night with each and every one of your staff. I promise this will not happen. And yeah, I did overhear a few gossips. I admit I'm curious, but it will only be intimate. There will be no affection. You have nothing to worry about. That you will separate me from you. As I already stated, this is merely a one-time activity to clear my mind. Perhaps I'll even discover something that will liven up our nightlife. A few new tricks will liven up our lovemaking. I've previously told you what the consequences will be if you do this. If you phone them immediately away and cancel the appointment, we can go to marriage counseling and fight to save her marriage. Do not be dumb. We will be all right. If you truly insist on counseling, you will repair your injured little ego. We can discuss it tomorrow, when I come back. With these words, she continued to get ready for the date. I changed into jeans and a t-shirt and exited the room. After a time, she walked downstairs clothed in the clothing she had laid out. She held a small clutch and examined herself in the mirror by the door. I was seated in my recliner in the living room. An automobile horn was heard outside. He's here. I have to go. I will see you in the morning, she murmured, stepping up to kiss me. Bye. I turned my head and backed away from her. She ended up kissing his ear. She stood up and gave me a grimace. Okay, so be it. Everything will return to normal once you have calmed down. Using these terms. She turned and walked towards the door. I turned to her with one final request. If you leave, it's the end of our relationship. You should think twice before throwing away 17 years of marriage. She turned to look at me. I do not throw anything out. As I have stated, I will return, and things will resume normalcy. With these comments, she opened the door and exited. Yes, I began to grieve at the end of my marriage and the lady I had loved solely for the last 20 years. 17 years married, 1 year engaged, and 2 years of exclusive dating. I had no idea how she could do this to me. She never voiced unhappiness with me. We lived a normal life, and she never expressed her desire for more. I would gladly offer her more if that is what she wants. We didn't argue over anything. Of course, there were occasional arguments, as there are with any partnership. Nonetheless, we discussed everything and reached a mutual understanding. I had previously planned what I would do if she went for it. After a half hour, I eventually got up and started working. I believe I waited a half hour for her to come to her wits and return. Obviously, this did not happen. I went upstairs and started implementing my strategy. It wasn't the best plan, but it was all I could do at the time. The house was fairly large, with 4 bedrooms, the master, Carly's, Josh's, and a large guest bedroom. The guest bedroom was the master's second bedroom, complete with a private bathroom. We used it when a family or my family visited. We also utilized it for children's sleepovers. This will be my temporary bedroom. It took me almost 2 hours to totally relocate from our old bedroom to my new one. I had no illusions about what would happen throughout our divorce. It was a fault-free state. This suggests that the divorce laws in this state were written by feminists who despise men in general, unless the wife was convicted of a major felony and imprisoned for at least 5 years. He bore the entire burden of culpability. It didn't matter whether the husband was an entirely innocent victim. The wife ended up with the house, children, alimony, and maintenance, while the husband was left with all of the bills. She gets a gold mine and he gets his, after I have organized my new temporary house. Several years ago, I went down to my home office and signed into our internet banking. I created another account in my name. It wasn't for any malicious reasons. I only wanted to buy her stuff and surprise her. We both had access to our funds, and on a few occasions, she came in to check on her finances and happened to notice a transaction I was making for her. Needless to say, she received no surprises for her birthday or Christmas, so I made a new account in my name alone so that I could buy her gifts without informing her in advance. Now I have decided to repurpose this account. She was aware of him but had no way of contacting him. First, I moved exactly half of her checking and savings accounts to my personal account. Second, I used the leftover funds in the joint account to pay off and cancel all of our credit cards. Then I registered for multiple fresh cards in my name only. Yes, I should have paid off everything before sending the funds, but I thought that it was better to repay all that the court ordered than to try to collect anything from her. I would transfer my direct deposit from work to my personal account when I arrived at work on Monday morning. On Monday, I'd also have to phone our broker and request a split of our investment. I had done all I could. I took another glass of Jim Beam on ice and went to my room for the night. I finished my drink and got ready for bed. It was not the best dream. First and foremost, I'm used to sleeping near to my wife. Without her, the bed appeared lonely, and my mind couldn't shut off. I kept thinking about what I could have done to prevent this. Should I have forcibly restrained her to keep her out of the door, go to the idiot's car with a baseball bat and a pistol? Was it worth going to prison? The night was long. I drifted asleep and passed out on occasion, but only for short periods of time. As light began to shine through the window, I made the decision to stand up. I was still tired, so I took a shower primarily to help myself wake up. After shaving, showering, and brushing my teeth, I dressed in trousers and a t-shirt and headed downstairs. I ate breakfast and drank a few cups of coffee while reading the newspaper. Kayla returned to the residence at 9 a.m. I was in my office at the internet, looking through potential apartments for rent. I had previously chosen lawyers and scheduled an appointment for Monday afternoon using their online scheduling. "Good morning, honey. I'm home as promised," she said cheerfully, entering the house. I simply ignored her. I was furious all night and early this morning about what she did. As I sipped my coffee, I realized I had done nothing to deserve her disdain. I also understood there was nothing I could have done to stop what she did. Everything rested on her conscience. If I had been able to stop her date last night, she would have done it again. Another time. Many individuals believe that you cannot suddenly cease loving someone. Perhaps they're right, but you can transform that love into hatred. The antithesis of love is not hatred, but rather indifference to hatred. Emotions are still there. Marriage counselors may often save a hateful marriage by transforming it into love. Indifference means there is no possibility at all. All the affection I had for my wife yesterday before I went home has transformed into hatred. It was shockingly simple to do. All I had to do was concentrate on the lack of respect she showed me. I then included her threats against me, if I had not agreed to this. Her disregard for my feelings exacerbated the situation. I had a few hours to focus on everything. Cute. Where are you now? I'm home. Just as I said. I even cleaned myself up before visiting your home. Kayla heard her call and walked around the house seeking for me. "Oh, here you are," she remarked, opening the door to my office. "I'm back, and now everything can return to normal." She arrived to my table. She walked around the table, extending her arms to embrace and kiss me. I pushed her away. "Keep your unclean lips away from me. Only God knows what they touched." Her eyes widened with shock. I had never spoken to her like that in all the years we had known each other. I continued before she could come up with an answer. "You must visit the clinic and undergo a comprehensive series of illness tests. I'd like to see a notarized certificate from you before you get your dirty claws on me again. I wouldn't want to spend the night with you for anything. Too much. Maybe then I'll care." I noticed her countenance shift from amazement to fury. I thought she would recognize her mistakes and repent. "I see you're still dealing with your injured ego. I'm heading up to our room to nap. I've had a rough night and need some rest. I hope you calm down so we can discuss later. I'm expecting a full apology for your rudeness this morning with these remarks." She turned and exited the room. I couldn't help but smile as I waited for her to return, and I wasn't disappointed. "What the hell were you doing?" I heard a shriek as she returned. "Where is your clothing? Where are all of your toiletries? What the hell are you doing?" She burst into my office. "What do you mean?" I asked quietly. "Everything I own is precisely where it should be." "What exactly are you talking about?" "Your closet is empty. Your drawers are empty. Your spot on the dressing table is empty." "What do you mean when you say everything is where it should be?" "As previously said, my clothes are either neatly hung in my closet or folded and put in my dresser. My toiletries are properly organized in the bathroom. This is incorrect. I just told you that your belongings are not in her bedroom," she exclaimed irritably. "Now I understand your difficulty. You see, you still think your bedroom is ours. I just told you that everything is where it should be. In my bedroom." "Do you mean?" "Yes. I told you I wouldn't put up with it, so I moved out of your bedroom. I'll stay in my new bedroom until I can locate an apartment and move out." I considered alerting her about our financial situation, but decided against it. Allow her to sort things out on her own. Besides, there's no point in spoiling the surprise before I make the investment. Her eyes narrowed with annoyance. "We'll talk about this later. I'll give you a week to recover from your minor seizure, after which I anticipate you to return everything to normal, not until I have a notarized certificate stating that you are free of all ailments." I shot back, returning to my computer. I spent much of the day in my office. The youngsters got home early in the morning. I wondered how long it would take them to recognize there was an issue. I identified several appropriate apartments, filled out applications, and scheduled a viewing appointment for Tuesday. Then I printed our financial statements. I'll need them for my lawyer on Monday. However, I had no illusions about selling the house. I decided that establishing its value might help to resolve the disagreement. In theory, she would only receive the value of one share. Wishful thinking, but nevertheless. I spent the rest of the day looking up the divorce laws in her state. I knew I would be, but I had to envision how much that would affect my planning, if nothing else. "Daddy, dinner is ready," Carrie spoke, sticking her head through the door. "Good day, son. Thank you." Kayla smiled brightly as I entered the kitchen. It was clear what her plan was. Kill me with compassion and show me what I'd lose if I didn't accept her actions. She gave her everything. She got dressed and applied her makeup. Her hair was arranged in a way I liked that day. She spent a long time in the kitchen creating my favorite meal. When I entered the kitchen, she approached me and handed me a glass of wine. "I poured you a glass of wine," she murmured, giving it to me and leaning in for a kiss. I could see the pain in her eyes as I pulled away from her and took the glass from her. I went to the sink, poured the wine, and set the glass on the countertop. Then I took a glass from the cupboard, added a couple of ice cubes, and poured a couple of fingers of Jim Beam. There was no way the children sitting at the table would miss this. Walking up to the table, I sat down and started conversing with the kids. I wasn't even paying attention to my wife. The supper was obviously tense. I kept up the discourse with the kids as best I could, but it was clear that we had severe issues. It didn't help that I didn't even put anything on my plate, much less eat it. These were my favorite meals, yet I walked past the bowls and plates without looking. I kept trying to strike up a discussion with the kids while sipping my drink. "Dad? Are you not going to eat anything?" Josh eventually asked. "No, not hungry." That was all I replied. After the most embarrassing dinner in history, I simply stood up, refilled my glass, and returned to my office. I didn't even try to help clean the table. Approximately half an hour later, I shut off the computer, grabbed my pickup truck keys, and left the house to eat dinner at a lovely, peaceful restaurant. After that, I went to the bar and had a few beers. When I got home, it was already late. I noticed the light was still on in Kayla's bedroom, so I closed the door to my room and made sure it was loud enough for her to hear. I closed the bedroom door and placed a chair underneath the handle. As I was preparing for bed, I heard her test the handle and then knock. She attempted to get me to open the door for almost 5 minutes before giving up. The next morning, I awoke early. I determined that today would be football day. There were 3 games scheduled for the morning, afternoon, and evening, and I planned to see them all. Yes, there were chores to complete around the house during the weekend, but I chose to neglect them. I'm not going to be here long, so Kayla can just leave it to someone else. I had already drained the majority of the coffee and began preparing to make an omelet for breakfast. I was finishing mine when Carly entered the kitchen. "Hello, Sunlight." "Omelet?" I asked. "Of course, Dad. Thank you." She took her drink and sat at the table, and I began cooking her meal. A few minutes later, Josh appeared. I promised him I'd cook for him as soon as I completed his sister's meal, make her omelet while I cooked Josh's. I heard Caleb enter the hallway, so I poured the remainder of the coffee into my cup and turned off the stove. She shuffled in, retrieved a cup from the cabinet, and glanced at the empty coffee pot. "You could not even leave a cup for me." She stared at me. "The coffee pot is over there. You know how to cook? It does not matter. So you are creating an omelet. I've just finished, but feel free to make one for yourself." I reacted by serving it on Josh's plate. I utilized the last of what I had prepared. I had previously removed all of the ingredients after taking care of the children. I exited the kitchen. It was already afternoon. I was sitting in the living room where the morning game was taking place. Kayla entered with a plate and a bottle of beer. She arranged everything on the coffee table in front of me. "I brought you food and drinks so you won't miss a single game," she replied brightly without looking at her. I raised my foot and swept the plate and bottle from the table to the floor. She just stood there, mouth open in disbelief. They just turned on a commercial, so I got up, walked to the kitchen, and fetched a beer. I wasn't going to drink anything she brought me, so it would have been pointless. No, I did not pick up after myself. She brought it in for no apparent reason other than to clean it herself. I didn't mind if it stained the carpet. I didn't expect to stay here long. "We need to talk about this," Kayla began. "Shut up! The game has begun," I responded. "For God's sake, you need to change your mentality. The kids have already noticed. They'll undoubtedly notice. I am sure they will notice when I move out. Oh, come to your senses. You are not moving out, and there will be no divorce." She insisted fast, leaving. It began around midday. At least they were considerate enough to wait until the break. Carly and Josh entered the room together. They sat on the sofa, facing me. "Dad, what's going on between you and Mom?" Carly began. "Well, now you know. Your mother and I are getting divorced. This has nothing to do with any of us. We both love you. This is only between me and your mother." "But why?" Josh asked. "Because your mother did something I couldn't accept. She did that even after I expressed my feelings about it. She did it anyway. She had absolutely no regrets." "Do you mean when she went on a date on Friday night?" Carly asked. "Do you know about it?" I was very startled. "Well, yes. Mom informed us you weren't pleased with it, so you know she cheated on me, right?" "No, I have not changed. She claimed she informed you in advance, so that was not cheating. She didn't do it secretly. That was the only time she had done something like that," Josh explained. "Yes, Dad. Besides, this was only one night out of the 20 years you had been dating and married. She suggested that if you truly loved her, you would simply let her have the night and go on with her life," Carly added. To be honest, I was stunned. What further saddened me was that my daddy's girl didn't even try to understand my situation. She sided with her mother and refused to listen to my point of view. Is this true? What if she actually loved me? She wouldn't even consider becoming intimate with anyone else. Come on, Dad. It happened only once, and she pledged never to do it again. Okay, let's talk about her pledges. A bit more than 17 years ago, she took a serious pledge to me. She made the commitment in front of God, our family and friends. She promised to abandon everyone else. There were no exemptions to this oath. This oath was only valid until death do us part. In case you didn't notice, neither of us died. If she might simply violate a public oath, how can I believe the promises she makes to me in private? Yes, but you also promised to be with her in good times and bad. Josh was considering becoming a lawyer. I said, I hope he does it much better, right? The difficulty is that your mother, by breaching her oath, breached the contract and liberated me from it. We just don't understand why you'd destroy your family in a single night, Carly asked. Why are you saying that? I'm wrecking the family. Why am I accused of what she did? Mom is not leaving. She wants to put this behind her and get on with her life. You're the one that leaves and makes a huge deal out of everything. Carly maintained that leaving would tear up the family. Following that, the situation did not improve. I attempted to clarify my stance, but they did not listen. They didn't care about my views, not even a little. Kayla had spent the previous day filling their minds with her notions. All they knew was that Mom had done something she needed to do, and Dad didn't love her or the kids enough to accommodate her demands. She persuaded them that Daddy's little man's ego had driven him to desert everyone and destroy the family. That is to blame for not being able to provide Mom with one small thing that she desperately wanted for her pleasure. Instead, Dad intended to make everyone suffer because he was stubborn. In truth, it was only one night out of their 20-year marriage. Seriously, what is one night out of 7,305 nights? Which equals 20 years with 365 days every year plus one extra day every 5 leap years. They eventually left when it became evident that I would not agree with their stance. I was able to watch the rest of the game in peace as it was coming to a conclusion. I can smell the smells of dinner being prepared. Obviously, this was another one of my favorite foods. While awaiting the evening game, I just sat and watched the post-game show. Time was running out. The highlight of the game was intended to happen in 20 minutes. Josh arrived and set. Dinner was ready. I stood up, grabbed the keys to my truck, and walked out the door. Where are you going? Is dinner on the table yet? Josh asked. I'm heading to the sports bar to watch the game and get something to eat, I responded. But Mom did. I'll be returning after the game, though I might stay for a bit beyond that. After the game, I sat down. They had a delicious burger that came with fries. The beer was also good. I only drank one beer for a quarter of the game, which was sufficient for me to get behind the wheel. Furthermore, it was only 5 minutes from home. When I arrived home, everyone had already gone to bed, so I simply walked to my bedroom, locked the door, and went to bed. The plate and bottle were cleared from the coffee table. By the time I arrived home, this made me smile. On Monday morning, I got up before everyone else and left the house. The first thing I did when I arrived at the workplace was phone my broker. I mentioned that I was getting divorced and asked him to share all of our investments in half. He opened a new account in my name exclusively and transferred half of our investment into it. The Human Resources Department came next. I withdrew Kayla's name from my retirement account and asked them to add Carly and Josh as my ears. I also gave them my new bank account details so they could divert my salary. There. Finally, I informed my boss that I was going through a divorce and would need time off to meet with my lawyer. He was fine with the court dates, meetings, and so on. My lawyer basically confirmed what I already knew. There was a slim chance that I may gain custody, but it all relied on where the kids wanted to live. They were of legal age, so the court would consider their wishes. Based on my chat with them yesterday, I wasn't going to count on it. In fact, the only reason the guy ever engaged a divorce lawyer was to make the process go more smoothly. I instructed him to begin the paperwork and request that she be served at work on Monday. I didn't even bother heading straight home from work. It was Monday Night Football, so I simply stopped at a sports pub. 3 tacos for $1. I eat 3 in the first half, then 3 more in the second. I ignored Kayla's text messages and phone calls. I responded and told Carrie where I was. Her reaction to this was unpleasant. When I walked in on them, all 3 gave me dirty stares. After the game, I simply went into my office and locked the door. When I finished and walked up to my room, everyone had already gone to bed. On Tuesday morning, I got up before everyone else and left the house. Everything was well at work, so I took the day off to look at apartments. I decided on a decent 2-bedroom apartment and paid a deposit. I can move in on Saturday. A trip to the second-hand store enabled me to purchase a sofa, table, and chairs. They were scheduled to be delivered on Saturday afternoon. I concluded I liked the bed I was using. He was going to steal everything from my home office. When I arrived home, they had already eaten dinner. I chuckled when I realized they hadn't even set out a dish for me. This suited me perfectly. I was not going to eat anyway. I simply walked to the refrigerator and pulled out everything I needed to create a large sandwich. After preparing the sandwich, I grabbed a bag of chips and a bottle and went to my workplace. "Godfather, why are you such an—" Carly exclaimed as she entered my office. "Carly, to put it simply, your mother cheated on me. She showed no regard for me at all." And then she tossed it at my face. "I will not put up with this." I described in detail what would happen if she consented to this. She did this while being aware of the consequences. You can't really destroy your family because of this. Come on, this means nothing. It was just one night, Carly. Someday, you will marry. Consider how you would feel if your husband informed you one evening that he had a date with a younger, more attractive lady and planned to spend the night with her. I'm sure I wouldn't enjoy it, but if you promised to come back to me and it was only for this one time, I'd hope I loved him enough to endure it. Besides, if he told me about it first, it would not appear that he was cheating. Yes, sure, do me a favor. When you marry, look your fiancé directly in the eyes when you express your vows. When you look into his adoring eyes and come across the term, leaving everyone else, picture how the tenderness in those eyes transforms into pure devastation when you tell him you are going to have an intern with another guy. With these comments, I turned my back on her and returned to work. When I arrived home from work on Wednesday evening, I was ambushed. Both sets of parents were present. People typically make fun of their father-in-law, but I got along great with her parents. They embraced me into their family because they had never had Charles. Her father, like me, was a technological buff. His main difficulty was that he preferred Fords. Okay, he had terrible taste in cars, but I could ignore it. He possessed a 1969 Mustang Fastback that was in excellent shape. Yes, I also get along really well with my parents. We were not one of those dysfunctional families whose children despise their parents. They've always been quite kind and supportive of me. Of course, there were differences, and they were never afraid to tell me when they believed I was wrong about something. Sometimes we just had to admit that we differed on something. So I entered the house and saw that the ambush had already been planned. I was a bit perplexed. I understood why her parents were present. Obviously, they would side with her. After all, she's their daughter. What confused me was that my own parents were present. It would appear that this would be counterproductive, as my parents would agree with me and support me. If she was trying to convince me to accept her infidelity, why would she invite someone who was not on her side, and who would disagree that I was correct to divorce her for cheating in 5th place? As you can expect, it took me a few extra minutes to figure this out. Tom Charles started his remarks. "I want you to know that my partner and I are quite unhappy in Kayla's actions, but we believe you are overreacting. Yes, she went out and had a night with another man, which was highly disrespectful to you, especially given the circumstances. However, it was only one error. You have been together for a total of 20 years. You have 2 beautiful children. Think about everything. Of course, you'll be able to survive this minor mishap. You don't have to destroy your family over a minor error. A minor error. Seriously, it was a big mistake. She did not trip by chance. It was a planned event. They likely planned it at least a week in advance. She then ambushes me barely an hour before she departs, giving me no time to fight her. This was an intentional attempt to deceive me, son. My mother decided to intercede. She did not fool you. She was the first to inform you about it. What? Of course you're correct. She told me. Have you told me? She never asked. She only stated she would do it, and I had no say in the situation. Even after I expressed my strong misgivings, she didn't care. I explained what would happen if she did this. Tom. Dad, my father cried, I understand your pain and rage, but consider your family. We love you, son. We will be there to assist you heal. But consider what you'll do to your family. Kayla still loves you, and that she will never do that again. We all believe that with counseling and work, you can overcome this. Breaking up a family is not an option. We raised you to be a good person. You must be responsible and sustain your family. Do not do acts that will destroy your relationship with your family. Consider your mother in me. These are our grandchildren, and we will do whatever it takes to keep in touch with them. I just stood there, absolutely startled. My parents were firmly on our side. They literally told me to disregard her adultery. I couldn't take it anymore. Turning around, I left the room and went to my bedroom. Kayla attempted to follow me, but I locked the door in her face. Within 15 minutes, I had dressed in jeans, a casual shirt, and boots. I did not say anything as I passed past the living room and out the front door. They were still sitting there, trying to chat to me as I passed by. I ignored them. I simply strolled out the door, got into my pickup truck, and drove to the sports bar for supper and a few beers. Fortunately, the house was silent and dark when I returned 4 hours later. Thursday and Friday passed in the same vein. I completely ignored Kayla, and my kids were still upset with me. I was amazed Kayla hadn't noticed that the credit cards were no longer working. I was confident that when she went shopping on Saturday, she would understand. It was Friday evening. I'd been home for approximately an hour. I sat in my office going through stuff and deciding what I would take tomorrow and later. Kayla opened the door and walked inside. She wore a sheer nightgown with stockings, a garter belt, and heels. I must say, she looked wonderful. Today, the children are spending the night somewhere else. It's time for you to let go of this bullshit and join me in bed. I want you to make love to me all night. I truly need you to take me back, she replied. I glanced at her for a moment. No thanks. Furthermore, I've yet to get a certificate from the clinic certifying your disease-free status. Stop being funny. I need you in my bed. Your hysteria will accomplish nothing. Come on, I need intimacy, she insisted, not the smallest bit of curiosity. Look, if you don't do this, I'll need to contact clearance again. This is a one-time deal for you. Damn it, it was a one-time thing. But if you continue to reject me, you are driving me away from you. Have fun. Please let me know if you bring him here so I can go. As she raced out of the room, smoke literally poured out of her ears and nostrils. It took several minutes to clear. A half hour later, I heard the front door slam. She nearly burned out her tires as she drove down the street, taking advantage of the fact that the house was empty. I collected a few items. I disassembled the bed and loaded it into the pickup, along with the majority of my clothes. Today, I'll sleep on the sofa at my office. I loaded everything I wanted to take with me into the pickup. I poured myself an iced Jim Beam and relaxed. The couch wasn't the most comfy I'd slept on, but that was fine. I arrived at the rental office early the next morning and was given the apartment's key. It took me some time, but I was able to unload everything from the pickup truck and into the apartment. When I returned, a handful of friendly neighbors stepped in to help. There was no one home yet, so the neighbor's adolescent son assisted me in loading the desk and office furnishings. The computer, printer, and accessories entered the cabin. I looked around the living room and thought, fuck everything. I will take the chair. It's remarkable that no one came home until the evening, or that no one thought to check out my office or spare bedroom. It's surprised they didn't realize the chair was missing. It was early evening when my phone rang. I responded after realizing it was my daughter. Dad, where are you? I'm home, honey. No, not at home. Your office is clean. The extra bedroom's bed and dresser are missing, as is your living room chair. Besides, I looked everywhere and you were not there. Also, your pickup is gone. You're correct. I am not there. I'm home. I don't live there anymore. I'm now living in an apartment. Perhaps after the divorce, I'll purchase myself another home. But for now, this will suffice. God, Dad, I can't believe you're acting like such an idiot. I thought you loved us. I love you, sweetie. I've always loved and will continue to love, but not enough to stay where I'm not wanted. Are you leaving us? You abandoned us and are hurting our family. Your mother was the one who wrecked the family. I explained what would happen if she went on the date. She did it anyway, but she believed you loved her enough to get through it, and I assumed she loved me enough not to do it. Amazing. Does not matter. Then she hung up. Yes, divorce was a nightmare. She battled it till the end. Consultation. She asked me to pay. I refused. I argued that if she needed something, she should pay for it. This was one of the rare arguments that I won. Such a waste of time. The consultant didn't particularly like me. I believe it had to do with the fact that I informed her that I had been ordered to attend class, but the court made no mention of my actual participation. I suffered all 12 sessions before the specialist gave up. She argued over literally everything. She disliked the worthless, humorous poster in the garage. She suddenly found herself unable to live without it. I unintentionally left the Bud Light in the office. She despised it, although it had been on my desk since college. It served as the focal point for her office renovations. Yes, it was absolute rubbish. She only did this to make the divorce process as painful as possible for me. Throughout this time, she made certain that I saw the children as little as possible. Finally, the judge granted the petition for divorce. I had to continue to pay half of my mortgage. Naturally, she kept the house. Child support was $2,000 a month, but I was able to see the kids every Wednesday night and weekend. What truly annoyed me was the $1,000 per month for 5 years of spousal support. If she remarried, the marriage would be nullified. During that time, I was not going to hold my breath. I discovered that she had moved clearance in with her before the divorce was official, so half of my salary went to her. I cashed out part of my investments and purchased a modest property in desperate need of restoration. At least I got it cheap. This is even on a 14-acre lot. Fortunately, I was able to get all of my tools out of the garage a week after I moved out. I refused to address them. I had the most of them before we met. When she pressed, I began raving about all of her jewelry, fine clothes, and shoes. The home had electricity, gas, and running water. There was a roof, but the walls remained. That was sufficient for me. I moved into the house and began working on it throughout the evenings and weekends. Visits? Yes, I was entitled to visitation. I actually made multiple visits. It was disastrous. Kayla tried everything she could to stop me. The kids were busy. They went for a weekend with friends. It's funny how it was always my weekend and not hers. Oh, Kayla has a dancing practice on Wednesday. Josh has a critical test on Thursday and should study. The few times I was able to visit the kids on Wednesday evenings, they were antagonistic to me. They kept blaming me for everything, even if I convey my viewpoint to them. When the opposition literally holds them hostage at all times, while I barely have an hour or two every now and then, it is a losing war. After the third time, they made it clear that they no longer wanted to see me. Yes, I could force them. So what's the point? Forcing them to see me would just lead to greater resentment. I gave them gift cards and letters for their birthdays and Christmas. All of them were returned unopened. I continued to provide my monthly paychecks. I witnessed them being cashed, but never heard a word. High school graduation. I believe they graduated from high school, but I have not heard anything about it. I wrote them a certified letter notifying them about the college funding I had obtained for them. In answer, I received no thank you. Kayla effectively turned my kids against me, just as she promised. I focused solely on work and home, and I did not go out or do anything. It's incredible how much money you can save doing this, as if all this weren't enough. Hello, Mom. When she answered the phone, I said something about the volume. How are you doing? She responded enthusiastically, as could be anticipated. Anyway, I have not heard anything about Thanksgiving. Will you host it again this year? There was silence on the other end. Mother, are you still there? I asked. Oh, it's a little awkward. Yes, we're going. However, Kayla, her parents, and children will attend the party. She will also introduce a new man into her life. We just thought having you here would be too embarrassing for everyone. After all, the kids are still upset with you for abandoning them, and you being with Kayla and her new partner will only add to the tension. Seriously, Mom, you're ditching your own son for Thanksgiving and bringing my ex-wife and her boyfriend instead. We want to keep a close relationship with our grandchildren. Besides, it is your fault. You should be working to keep your family together, not tearing them apart. How about coming to our house on Christmas Eve? Your father and I will be spending Christmas Day at Kayla's place, but we may rejoice with you the day before. It does not matter. I am honored. I'm going to end the conversation. I spent Christmas Eve at home, watching Die Hard while avoiding my mother's repeated calls and text messages inquiring where I was. I was not in a festive mood. I was just browsing through the packages I sent to my children a week ago yesterday. They were returned to my porch. True, 5 years later I received a message regarding the wedding. Kayla married clearance the weekend after I made my final maintenance payment. Josh had turned 18 the year prior, so I was done paying child support. I was now free of my prior family and commitments to them. I celebrated by getting drunk. Yeah, I'm not particularly proud of it, but screw it. I worked my 5th job and gave them all of my love, only to be rejected and treated poorly. To hell with them. Now that I'd met all of my commitments to ungrateful offspring, I determined to push them out of my mind as much as possible. They definitely did not want to be in a relationship with me, so I ignored them as much as possible and moved on with my life. Except for one issue, which has always worried me. I had to keep paying half of the mortgage on the house. Of course, that ended when Josh graduated, but my name remained on the contract. I believe Kayla had the false assumption that the house was hers. The divorce decree stipulated that she may only live there until the children finished school. Now all bets were off. I was entitled to half the property, which was pretty considerable. First, I contacted my lawyer. When we split, the house was evaluated at around $300,000, with approximately $200,000 of equity. This happened 5 years ago. Since then, we have been making on-time mortgage payments, and property values in our region have risen dramatically. After some web investigation, I estimated that the assessed value is currently around $500,000, with a net worth of $450,000. Yes, we only have $50,000 remaining on the bill. Why did I do that? Of course, it's for financial reasons. Who couldn't use an extra $250,000? There was also the possibility that this would make Caleb very angry. She adored this house, and she would be outraged if I asked for a penny for anything. And I wanted some type of retribution for what she'd done. It would also cover all of the house upkeep and mortgage payments I needed to make for her. The call arrived about a week later. Volume. What the hell is going on? Okay, Kayla, there's not much going on here. I'm currently working on refurbishing the house I bought. What is happening to you? I must admit that I was shocked when you called to see how I was doing. After all, this is the first time you've spoken to me since our divorce. I am not phoning to see how you are doing. I am contacting to find out why. Why? A realtor has just come to my house to check it and obtain my signature on the sales contract. Oh, this. Given that both of our names appear on the title, this should be rather obvious. She will undoubtedly require your signature for the deal. What about the sale? I adore this house and have no plans to sell it. So when may I expect a check from you for my half share? Nice try. I received the house as part of my divorce settlement. You only utilized the house till Josh finished school. This occurred last month. We can either sell it and divide the proceeds. Alternatively, you can buy my half. If you think I'll pay you $100,000 for a house that is properly mine, you're mistaken. Well, that proves I'm not insane. I'm not asking for $100,000. You might have completed this 5 years ago. Now, given the home's equity is approximately $450,000, my part is $225,000. Given all of the pricey furniture you just must have, let us round that up to $250,000. You're nuts. I will not give you a penny, she yelled before hanging up. Yes, I chuckled when she hung up. Yes, my lawyer got her arrested, but it was worthwhile to see her expression. Several months later, a judge found in my favor. I even persuaded the judge to order her to pay the legal bills, as well as my lawyer, for dragging her to court for something that could have been resolved outside of court. After accounting for the cost of furniture, the house was worth more than I imagined. In the end, they purchased me rather than selling me. I later learned that they were primarily using clearance money. This ultimately cost him 6th place, but more about that later. I got the house in order. I even created a decent-sized workshop behind the house. I purchased an old 1972 Chevrolet truck that was in horrible shape. I was primarily interested in the chassis. The remainder would have been replaced. Anyway, during the last year, I've disassembled, cleaned, and totally repainted it. After the paint and bodywork were completed, it was time to focus on the chassis. The rear differential was still in fine condition, but I rebuilt it. It had to resist the amount of power I was planning to throw into it. The transmission is a 4-speed manual Borg-Warner T10. It was a brief thing. I choose to have some fun with the engine. It would only be a toy, not suitable for regular driving. A 427 big block engine. I found it online at a spare parts warehouse. I purchased it in order. The delivery was made once it arrived. I set it on the stand and started pulling it apart. I had to send it to a machine shop to get the cylinders, connecting rods, and cam board replaced, as well as new forged crankshaft pistons, 11 coal, and one huge heavy cam. I machined and polished the heads before installing dual spring valves and a supercharger to bring everything to mind. Yes, I would certainly drive through more gas stations and businesses, but I would only drive through a few. I chromed the valve covers, polished the aluminum on the supercharger, and installed steel-braided hoses. Opening the hood nearly necessitated sunglasses. The first time I went out on the road, I almost hit it. I was traveling down the interstate when I decided to get petrol, a big mistake. The back tires immediately lost grip, and I barely managed to maintain a straight line before letting off the gas. Remember to press the gas pedal slowly. After that, I began driving more carefully. Several weeks later, I saw an advertisement for a public vehicle show. I thought it would be amusing, so I filled out the form and paid the entrance money. When the day arrived, I loaded up the 1972 Chevy and proceeded to the park. I checked in and received a slot. While I was setting up the car, I spotted a very excellent 1968 GTO parked next to me. I set up my shade structure behind the truck, a few chairs and a refrigerator. I completed my setup. That was when I noticed some lovely redheads sitting on chairs behind the GTO. Yes, I mentioned redheads, plural. There were two of them. One appeared to be around my age, while the other was in her mid to late teens, possibly still in school. I missed two very critical points. I didn't see the guy with them, nor did I notice anything on the older woman's left ring finger. "Good morning." "I like your car," I responded pleasantly. They both looked up from whatever they were doing. "Hello? Thank you." The older one commented, "I like your pickup truck too." "Thank you. Have you been to several of them?" "This is my first. I've attended auto events before, but only as a spectator. This is the first time I'm participating. By the way, my name is Tom. My kid and I are participating for the third time. My ex has previously participated in them multiple times. I'm Marie, and this is Jenny, my daughter. In that case, when you finished, why don't you two join me in the shade? I have a cooler full of drinks and would appreciate any information I can obtain about these concerts." We ended up sitting for virtually the entire day. We would occasionally get up and chat to someone about our autos, but the day was extremely wonderful. Now, I did not win any honors, but I had a good time. I learned that she divorced her spouse 3 years ago because she caught him cheating. He cheated with his boss's wife. She struck a deal with him. She would give him all of the videos if he transferred the GTO to her. She informed me that it would be devastating for him, and she wanted him to keep his work so that he could continue to pay her child support and maintenance. It was a double win. Besides, his boss was in 5th place, and she didn't mind. Then his wife started cuckolding him. Jenny was also nice and engaged in the talk. She told me that she was furious with her father for his infidelity. She wants nothing to do with him anymore. We were having so much fun, and I didn't want it to end. When the show ended, I suggested they go to Red Lobster for dinner a few blocks away. They agreed, so we went there. I did not want to be sad, but they asked, so I gave them my story. I've listed the important points. I informed them that my children had sided with my wife and no longer wanted anything to do with me. "Are you claiming that she cheated, and your children blame you for divorcing her?" Jenny was amazed. Yes, I attempted to explain everything to them, but by that point, she had turned them against me. Marie placed her hand on my shoulder. "Tom, I am so sorry for you. You seem like a decent guy, but you don't deserve this." She spoke truly. I decided to switch the topic to something more enjoyable. We ended up talking and laughing for an additional hour. We seemed to have a good connection. We swapped numbers, and Marie agreed to meet with me again. As they went away, I noticed Jenny offer me a big smile, wink, and 2 thumbs up. I understood she did not mind meeting her mother again, so Marie and I met again. It was the following weekend. I called and inquired. She agreed gladly. Dinner and dance. I got a kiss on the cheek as I walked her to the door. As I turned to go, I noticed a red-haired teen girl at the window smiling and giving me 2 thumbs up. After 2 more dates, I invited them both to my house and prepared dinner. After my divorce, I learned to cook really well. A network of eateries, several YouTube videos, lots of trial and error. I made a very excellent lasagna, so I landed on that. They seemed to enjoy it. They absolutely liked my house. But I overheard Marie telling her daughter that it absolutely required a woman's touch. I would not argue if asked. The following weekend, they welcomed me to their home. Marie prepared in a style that surpassed my weak attempts. Even Kayla couldn't match Marie's performance. I couldn't help it. I know it is impolite, but I couldn't stop eating. Finally, I had to apologize to them for making myself look like a pig. They simply laughed and questioned why I was sorry. That was the highest praise you could pay to a woman who enjoys cooking. She told me Jenny was nearly as good as her. This occurred 2 weekends later. I invited Marie to supper, followed by a dance club. We'd been dancing to slow tunes for a while before starting to play. We clung together, dancing to the pulse of the music. We'd already gotten into some pretty passionate kissing a few weeks prior. She bent down and murmured into my ear, "Take me home." To be honest, I was astonished. I thought we were having a good time, but now she wants to go home. I pulled back to look at her. She must have noticed the expression on my face and started laughing. "Oh, you silly man. I intended to say, take me to your house." Oh well, at least I had a standard truck, not a 72. I doubt I could have kept the tires on the road if I had driven the 72 home. We made love. We ended up repeating this 3 times before falling asleep. I prepared her breakfast before driving her home. I got another double thumbs up from the red-haired teenager in the window. Several months later, I inquired, and she responded. It was a modest ceremony in front of a judge. They moved into my house immediately after the wedding. Jenny even started calling me Daddy. Life was lovely. Yes, there were disagreements. Yes, Jenny and I had our differences. She was still a teenager, and I was the authority figure. I sometimes have to say no. Nonetheless, she respected me, and her mother loved me just as much as I loved her. Around a year later, I received an unexpected call. It was a number I couldn't recognize. "Hello?" I replied, picking up the phone. "Hello, Daddy," said an enthusiastic female voice on the other end of the line. "Carly? Yes, Daddy, it's me, and I've got good news. Is this true? I'm extremely glad to hear from you," I responded. It was lovely to hear her. Maybe she wants to improve their friendship. I am getting married. That's great. Honey, I'm very delighted for you. I want you to attend my wedding. Oh, honey, especially for a father. It is a huge privilege to walk his daughter down the aisle. I also set up a wedding fund for you. Oh no, Clarence is paying for the wedding, and you'll walk me down the aisle. Also, because it would be unpleasant for you and your mother to sit together, you will not take the first pew. But I genuinely want you to be present. Clarence, is this the one your mother cheated on you with? Did she actually marry this piece of? Listen, Dad. I'm trying to restore our relationship, and I wanted to reach out and invite you to my wedding. Furthermore, when you departed, she and Clarence were able to spend more time together, fall in love, and marry. In truth, it is your fault. If you had not abandoned us, she and Clarence would never have continued to date. Fine. I see you still believe that your mother did nothing wrong. So I will be unable to attend for 2 reasons. First and foremost, I cannot support a marriage I know will fail. Most likely, you will cheat on your husband as your mother did on me. If he's anything like me, he'll throw you out of 5th place as soon as he finds out. Second, you just took my father's last big honor and gave it to the scoundrel who purposefully seduced the married woman. This one again demonstrates how shallow and selfish you have become. Okay, if you continue to remain like Wei, you won't see your grandchildren. If you raise kids to look like you, I still do not want anything to do with them. Really? Dad, Mom is correct. You actually are. That was the last thing I heard from my daughter after I hung up. So here are the odds of a relationship with my ex-daughter-in-law, only a little more powerful than stock. I didn't even notice Jenny sneaking around the corner and taking my phone. I didn't even realize she was home. I was furious at my father. I tried to contact him, but he had the audacity to speak to me like that. It is his fault that our family has fallen apart. I tried to be friendly and invited him to my wedding, but he simply threw everything at me. I hope he will finally accept responsibility for what he done to our family. Looking down, I noticed that my phone was buzzing. I didn't recognize the number, but these types of calls are common when arranging a wedding. Hello? Hi, is it Carly Williams? Yes, can I help you? Yes, you can. You can quit calling my father. And being polite to him. He is the best person I have ever known. He does not deserve someone as dumb and spoilt as you, calling him to remind him that you are a pitiful excuse for humanity. I swear, you and your family squander air. Who in the heck are you? My name is Jenny Williams. I'm your sister. My mother married your ex-father and he adopted me. I love him with all of my heart, and I would never dishonor or humiliate him in the slightest. You offend the world's girls. I know everything that happened. Your mother went on a date with no regard for her husband and became intimate with another man. The saddest part about it all is that you don't seem to care. Let me tell you that my biological father cheated on my mother. She tossed him to the curb without hesitation. You can be sure that if my mother ever cheated on my father, I would assist him throw her out with the rest of the trash. Yes, even though he is not my biological father, he is the most decent, caring, and sensitive person I've ever known. I'm thinking about sending your mother a card thanking her for being such a fool and letting him leave. He would not be my father if it hadn't been for her great ignorance. Oh, and you can inform your grandparents that they have another granddaughter. But I have no desire to be in a relationship with anybody who is so horrible as to abandon his own son for a cheater and her wicked offspring. There's one more thing you can do for me when you make your joking vows. Look into your husband's eyes and consider when he decides to cheat on you and when he actually does. Call me and tell me what happened so I can laugh at you. She said, "You have a shitty life, sis," before hanging up. I glanced at the phone, shocked. First and foremost, I was astonished to learn that my father married. You'd think he'd send his children an invitation. Secondly, I discovered that I now have a younger sister. The weird thought entered my mind. I couldn't help but think she was very similar to me. Mom informed Josh and me about Dad leaving him and destroying the family over a minor issue. At first, I assumed that Dad had a valid reason for this and decided that I could live with him instead of Mom. But then Mom described how she felt and how she only needed this small item to renew herself. After all, it was only a brief amount of time in comparison to the length of their relationship. Besides, Mom was eager to stay together and work things through. Dad acted like a pig, refusing to even attempt. It was Dad who left. He was the one who had separated them. I could not believe how cruelly she treated me. She didn't even give me a chance to explain that it was Dad who abandoned us and Mom who was attempting to move on. It was as if she didn't care that it was a one-time event. Given how long they'd been together, that should have never occurred to them. And she has the audacity to call me all of these horrible names. She doesn't even recognize me. And why was Dad upset? Of course, Clarence was going to accompany me down the aisle. After all, he's been by my side for the last few years. I haven't spoken to my father since Josh left, and I told him how unhappy we were over his departure. Additionally, Clarence paid nearly $220,000 for my wedding. I could not conceive how much money my father could save for my wedding. Will it be sufficient? Half an hour later, when my mother and both grandma arrived, I was still irritated over the phone calls. They went shopping. Mom quickly recognized my mood. "Honey, what happened? I told your father about the wedding and invited him to come. After all, I am his only daughter, and I assumed he would want to attend my wedding. I'm hoping that this is something we can build on and rekindle our connection." "Oh, that's fantastic," Grandma Williams exclaimed. "Will he be there?" "We haven't heard from him since he called about Thanksgiving a few years back." I exhaled. "No." He became enraged when I informed him Clarence would lead me down the aisle, and I believed it would be too embarrassing for him to sit in the first row with Mom and Clarence. Oh, this is extremely horrible. I assumed he had already mastered his piggish intransigence. If that wasn't horrible enough, I discovered 5 minutes later that I have a half-sister, I said, and both of them expressed their surprise in unison. Yes. A few minutes after Dad hung up, the girl who identified herself as Jenny Williams called me. Apparently, Dad married her mother and adopted her. She wasn't particularly helpful on the phone. Actually, the best thing she said was that she wished to thank my mother for being foolish. Otherwise, she wouldn't have such a wonderful father. I recounted both phone exchanges to them. They were stunned by Dad and Jenny's harshness. Tom married, but we were not invited to the ceremony. He did not even tell us about it. "Do I have another granddaughter?" Grandma Williams whispered to herself. Finally, my wedding day came. I reflected briefly on what my father had said and was little saddened that he would not be present on my big day. So I turned to him and he rejected me. I shrugged it off. After all, it had been a good day. I married a man I actually loved because he is the person I want to spend the rest of my life with. Clarence smiled as he took my hand and we began walking down the aisle to the strains of the wedding march. I was pleased seeing all of my friends and family. Both my grandparents were present. Josh was one of Bobby's top men. Everyone was present to celebrate my wonderful day. My eyes welled up with tears of excitement. As we passed my mother, I noticed Bobby looking at me from in front of the priest. I noticed her grinning with pride. Joyful tears ran down her cheeks. Clarence lowered my veil, kissed me on the cheek, and murmured, "Congratulations, baby." He then turned me over to my future husband. When the priest inquired who gave the bride right immediately, Clarence said, "Her mother and I." Something sounded off, but I couldn't figure out what. This quickly passed as the priest started the ceremony. I peered into the eyes of the love of my life. I made a commitment to have and maintain in sickness and health, in good times and bad. "We're leaving." I could not say it. I looked right into Bobby's eyes and couldn't say anything. I suddenly remembered what I had stated over the phone. I glanced into my betrothed's eyes and realized he was with another lady. The picture abruptly changed. Now I was looking into a broken man's eyes, informing him that I had spent the night with another man. These images raced across my thoughts. The words came out without thinking. I understand now, when previously it appeared that we were the focus of the public's attention. It was nothing compared to what it was now. Bobby stared at me, concerned. It felt as if a weight had descended on me. My face lit up with the largest smile I'd ever had. "Finally, I understand," I told Bobby. "This is really nice, Carly. But what did you immediately understand?" "Everything," I responded. Then I became serious. "Bobby, do you truly love me?" "Of course, I love you." "How are you even asking this?" "I had to ask since I cannot marry you today." I swear I felt a rush of air pass me as the entire audience gasped in surprise. "We will still get married, just not today. This is wrong, and I must make it right. I'm only getting married once, and it will be for the rest of my life, so I need to get it properly. Baby, what happened? Bobby, I love you with everything I've got. I am going to marry you. I will explain everything to you so you understand. But we have to go and start mending everything. We will postpone everything until another day and have our wedding our way. You will not abandon me at the altar, will you? Not a chance. In fact, you should join me. I spoke to the visitors. I deeply regret this, but I simply cannot go through with it today. We are not canceling our wedding. We're just postponing it. We will notify you when we have set a new date. We understand if you decide not to come, but consider what story from today will stick with you for years to come. Don't you want to return next time and see what happens? In any event, in order to compensate for your dissatisfaction, the reception hall must be prepared. Everything has already been paid for with non-refundable deposits, so why not take advantage of them? The bar is open, so eat, drink, dance, and have fun. Do not worry, Clarence will pay the bill. With that, I took Bobby's hand and returned down the aisle. My mother suddenly stopped my escape, and Clarence stood next to her. He did not appear pleased that I had just flushed nearly $20,000 down the toilet. I also noted that all of the visitors were now focused on the new confrontation. Those who stood up to depart for the reception paused to see the next show and began shouting gibberish about the money spent and how I was going to repay him in full for the trick. I just pulled. Then it was Mom's turn. "Carly, what are you doing? Where are you going?" she asked. "I'm fixing an error that I made several years ago." "What error?" "The biggest mistake of my life. I made a mistake by listening to everything you said, instead of helping Daddy kick you out of 5th place. The error I made was blaming my father for wrecking the family when it was entirely your fault, by cheating on him. Carly, I am your mother, and you will treat me with respect." "Really, Mom? A cheater who has cheated before will continue to cheat." "Carly, how dare you? How dare I? It's a shame that I looked up to you." It wasn't until I gazed into Bobby's eyes as I said my pledge that I realized you're a nasty person. He was once a deceiver and will always be one. Looking into his eyes, I knew how awful it would be if he cheated on me. I knew how much I would hurt the person I love if I cheated on him. I believe my father was still a decent role model for me, but you certainly were not." "What do you mean?" Mom asked. I sensed some terror in her eyes. "Seriously, Mom, do you think I'm unaware of your Wednesday afternoon workouts with your personal trainer, Jim Davis? Why do they always take place in his apartment rather than at the gym? It's amusing how you just go to the gym to see it. What about the fact that Carlos, your pool cleaner, requires an extra hour every 2 weeks because you have a night after cleaning the pool? In case you try to refute it, I have some good footage from the occasions I arrived home early. And don't forget to tip Mario, your hairstylist, in the back room after each visit to the salon. At least Clarence is your boss at work, so he doesn't have to worry about you cheating on him with your boss. Have I forgotten anybody? Oh yes, I almost forgot about Alan Morris, your neighbor for the past 3 years. He'd stop by every time his wife had a bachelorette celebration." Her gaze shifted to Clarence as I finished airing her dirty clothing. Perhaps she hoped he didn't hear anything, despite the fact that I yelled it loudly enough to be heard throughout the chapel, and he was standing less than 2 feet from me. Clarence had a look of complete disbelief on his face when I looked at him, and wicked thought entered my mind. "Oh, and Clarence, before God and all these witnesses, I swear, with the same commitment that my mother did when she made her wedding vows, that I will repay you for the money you spent on his wedding. We all know how she keeps her promises, so you can entirely rely on me to honor that promise. Just as she had kept hers. Yes, he should not hold his breath for even 10 cents. I noticed that Mom was distracted. I pulled Bobby down the aisle. I made a brief stop to speak with the videographer. Yes, he did capture everything on camera. He handed me a copy of the videotape and smiled warmly. He was resolved to create a copy in case something happened to the original. I instantly signed the authorization form to upload the video to YouTube. I was hoping it would go viral, adding to my mother's shame. Bobby and I dashed out to the parking lot. He arrived in his car and her bags were in the trunk. We intended to take them to the limousine before leaving the gathering. His brother was planning to take her to his house after the reception. I grinned, knowing Daddy would adore Bobby, and got into the passenger seat. I became instantly horny. We switched on the ignition and the massive twin-carb Ford 40 engine roared into life. Even though it wasn't made by General Motors, the 1969 Challenger was a beast. "Where are we going?" he asked as we exited the parking lot. "We're heading west on 156th. I will find the address and enter it into Waze," I replied while working on the phone. It was not difficult. After all, he did not attempt to hide. I knew the city he lived in, and a search of the property records provided the information I needed. He was almost 2 hours away. We could only pray that he was home when we arrived. We did not pause to change clothing. I was on a mission and I didn't want to waste time. It's unusual to open your front door and see a woman in a bridal gown and a man in a tuxedo standing on your porch. I mean, if you are a church minister and live in a church, this is likely to happen from time to time. The problem was that I was not a priest and did not reside in the church. What was even more amazing was that I could tell which one was which. I had no idea who this man was, but it was certainly my eldest daughter standing there. My eldest daughter has made it apparent that she no longer wants to see me. I remembered that today was her wedding day, but I had no idea why she was here. She must be attending church, a reception, or on her way to her honeymoon. Standing on my doorway was the very last place she should have been. "Can I chat to you for a minute, Daddy?" she inquired quietly, still astonished. I took a step back and let them to enter. I pointed to the living room where Marie and Jenny were sitting. I also observed the surprised look on their faces. "Carly, here is my wife Marie with her daughter Jenny." "Jenny, Marie, this is Carly. Sorry, but I'm not sure who the guy is with her." "Oh yes, Dad, this is Bobby Jensen, my fiancé. Bobby, this is my father, Tom Williams, with his wife Marie and my sister Jenny." Carly introduced Graham. "I assumed he was supposed to be your husband by now. Didn't you get married a few hours ago?" I was perplexed. "This is what I need to speak with you about. I could not do it today. I can't get married unless my father takes me down the aisle. Dad, I finally understand. You are correct. You were always correct. I apologize for getting caught up in my mother's situation and blaming you. Mom abandoned everything. Now you have abandoned us. Forgive me for everything I've said and done. You did not deserve any of this. I refuse to make excuses for my behavior because there are none, except I was young, stupid, and followed the wrong people. I only hope you can forgive me and accept me back into your life." I really want to marry Bobby. He's a great man, and I know you enjoy him. I can't marry him unless you promise to walk me down the aisle and marry me off." Well, this was totally unexpected. I probably should have focused on other things, but there appeared to be one or two elephants in the room, even though I was overjoyed that my daughter realized I wasn't the man who abandoned them and wanted me back in her life. My curiosity at the scene in front of me demanded some attention. "So, Carly, did anything happen at the wedding? I mean, you're wearing a bridal gown and Bobby is in a tuxedo, so I'm betting you went to the wedding." She stared at herself and then at her fiancé. "Oh, yes. In fact, we were about halfway through the ceremony when I had an epiphany," she explained, handing me the DVD. "Maybe you should watch it while Bobby and I change into our usual clothing." Bobby dashed to the car and grabbed his suitcase, while Marie led Carly to the bedroom so they could change while all was going on. I attached a video player to the huge screen in the living room. Once Carly and Bobby were gone, Marie returned and sat next to me while I hit the play button on the remote. It all began as a regular wedding ceremony. The groomsmen led the bridesmaids down the aisle and then parted at the altar. Bobby entered with the priest, ring bearer, and flower girl. Finally, Clarence led Carly down the aisle. Everything was normal until Carly started speaking her vows. Even this was somewhat usual. Suddenly, she appeared to be having difficulty speaking. She seemed to be stuck on a single word. She made it. I can't believe she did it, and it affected her so badly. Ginny mumbled to herself. I was going to ask her what she was talking about when Carly abruptly ended the pledge and changed everything. We saw the footage of her interrupting the wedding and addressing her mother. I was stunned by her revelations. Apparently, her infidelities increased when she married Clarence. By the end of the film, Carly and Bobby had changed their clothing and returned to the living room. I simply couldn't get through it. I looked into Bobby's eyes and realized how much it would hurt him if I did them in the same way that Mom did. You? I now realized what it means to abandon everyone else and how my mother violated this commitment. Then I realized how badly she had disrespected you. Then I dishonored you by marrying without giving you the place of honor you deserved. How can I make such solemn vows in a ceremony where two of the most despicable guys I know take pride of place? How can these vows have any real value if they don't include the most noble man I know? I knew that if I genuinely wanted these promises to mean anything, it would be my father. The man who actually taught me principles and honesty, who would accompany me down the aisle. I decided that when I married Bobby, it should be you rather than Mom and Clarence. Carly remained silent for a minute before smiling and looking at Ginny. Besides, I need my younger sister to be one of my bridesmaids. Your kick in the 5th spot startled me up. I remembered what you told me as I tried to say the commitment to Bobby. How can I marry if you are not by my side? This was quite crucial. We spoke for several more hours. I had no idea Ginny had gotten Carly's phone number from my phone shortly after I left the studio. After phoning Carly that day, she went to her room and called Carly from her phone a few minutes later. It was becoming late, so I requested them to stay in the guest bedroom overnight. Carly received numerous additional calls throughout the evening. She ignored Clarence and Kayla's calls, but numerous of her pals contacted her. It appears that some of the attendees accepted her invitation to have fun at Clarence's expense. He attempted to cancel the appointment, but it was too late to refund the money by the time he arrived at the reception venue. Several dozen customers had already taken advantage of the open bar. The food was also being prepared, and all of the waitstaff, bartenders, and DJs were already present and working. Clarence eventually gave in, got a drink, and went to a table in the corner to drown his sorrows. Josh texted her a video he made with his phone when his mother came over to talk to Clarence. It appears that things did not go well. Clarence shouted a much. Insulting language dominated the conversation. It appears that this relationship will shortly terminate. Josh claimed he was able to cancel his plane and resort reservations, but was charged a 20% penalty for late cancellations. Because Carly and Bobby had already taken time off work to go on their honeymoon, they remained with us for the entire week. I reconnected with the daughter I believed I had lost. I also met Bobby. He's a nice guy with high moral standards. The relationship was rocky at first since he had only heard lies about me from my ex-wife, son, and daughter. Not quite a lie, but rather an embellishment of the reality that portrayed me as a horrible guy who abandoned his family. Several essential facts were kept out of these interactions. He warmed up to me as the facts became clear. This was useful when I showed him my workshop for my most recent projects. Although he loved classic Dodges, we both admired each other's vehicles. Hey, we're both Ted enthusiasts. At least he wasn't one of those slackers who drove an automatic. His opponent had a manual transmission around midweek. A new wedding date has been arranged. It was planned to take place in the same location on the same weekend. 1 year later. This time I'll pay for her and lead her down the aisle. In addition, Marie was asked to assist with the wedding. Yes, Jenny was going to be a bridesmaid too. Carly and Bobby contacted the entire wedding party to update them on the newest developments. Well, everyone except Caleb and Clarence. Over the next 6 months, Carly and I worked hard to restore our relationship. Bobby and I got to know each other better. We went to various car shows, driving Marie's GTO, my 72 truck, Bobby's Challenger, and even convincing Jenny to enter the 74 Firebird. I purchased for her. Carly and Bobby would spend a few days with us once or twice a month. Josh also showed up a couple times. It was more tough with him because he was always more attached to his mother than to me. However, we were able to rebuild a portion of our connection. I believe he did it more for Carly than for me, but I will take it. In addition, he was always up to date on developments at home. By the way, Kayla and Clarence were not doing well. Clarence has moved out and filed for divorce. Kayla was relieved to learn that Clarence filed for divorce due to irreconcilable differences rather than adultery. This meant that the draconian penalties outlined in the marriage contract would not apply. He applied in such a way that it went fast and without a fight. The good news for Clarence was that he had a prenuptial agreement. The marriage contract stipulated that all property he possessed before to marriage was not subject to split. Kayla would receive half of the property acquired during the marriage, but this would not be sufficient given the property accumulated before to the marriage. Basically, she will keep the house and receive approximately $50,000. Clarence attempted to obtain a portion of the house, but he lacked the necessary proof. Of course, my portion was acquired with his money following the divorce, but there was no genuine proof of this. He appears to have obtained the funds through a business loan for his company, but he never documented how he spent them. Furthermore, they never included his name on a title deed for the house because it belonged to Caleb prior to their marriage. She refused to even discuss the subject. In the end, Clarence paid off the loan but accomplished nothing. It was too late for him to file for adultery after he knew he would never receive the house money back. Rumors of Kayla's exploits circulated quickly, undermining her social standing. Friends began to avoid her, and invitations to parties, charity activities, and other gatherings ceased. To make matters worse, she was unemployed and reliant on Clarence's money, thus her financial condition deteriorated rapidly. Clarence learned an expensive lesson. He lost several $100,000 purchasing my half of the house. He lost an additional $28,000 due to a botched wedding. He was also required to pay Caleb $50,000 in the divorce. And then there is humiliation. Kayla was upset that her indiscretions had become public and that Clarence was divorcing her in this manner. She began telling her surviving friends that she had cheated on him because of his little manhood. Such talk spreads like wildfire. It wasn't long until all of the women he tried to approach in the bar were laughing at him. He became a loner, going solely to work and then home. His social life disappeared. "Ready?" Daddy asked my eldest daughter. No father is fully prepared to let his daughters leave. "But I'm honored to do this for you," I responded. The doors opened, and music started to fill the church. I went forward, starting with my left foot, and proudly led my daughter down the aisle. I took a short look, and my smile spread even wider. My ex-wife was seated in the 4th row. My wife, Marie, was honored in the front row. I'll join her when I do the last important honor for my daughter. "Who gives this woman as a wife?" I shouted aloud. "As her father, I give her to my wife." I whispered to her, "I love you, baby," kissing her face before handing her to Bobby. Yes, I neglected to name my ex-wife. No, this was not my idea. Carly asked that I do it this way. I turned around, walked over, and sat down next to my wife to have in sickness and health, in good times and bad, leaving everyone else behind. Carly virtually shouted the final phrase before shining with a smile. She completed her vow. It was a beautiful ceremony. There was applause as we kissed at the end. I peered down from the main table. Marie was next to me. I noticed Kayla sitting at a table to the side. She didn't appear to be happy every time she looked up from her reading material. She frowned. I observed she made use of the open bar. Clearance was not requested. I'm not sure if you would have come even if you had been invited. My final huge achievement for my daughter was complete. I escorted her down the aisle, married her, gave a lovely toast to the newlywed couple, did the father-daughter dance with my daughter, and then danced with my wife, while my daughter danced with her husband and his parents to the second song. My duties were fulfilled. I was sitting at the table next to my wife. My youngest daughter was dancing with one of the men who were competing for her attention. "Sorry, Marie, is not it? Can I borrow your hubby for the dance?" I heard my wife's familiar voice behind me. Marie and I turned to confront my ex-wife. Marie took a time to consider her response. "Just remember to return him to the location you abducted him. I trust you, but I don't trust her not to do something foolish." I called Kayla to the floor. They began playing a slow song. I wouldn't be surprised if she asked for that exact purpose. I tried to maintain my distance and not drag her towards me. We danced briefly before she spoke. "You should have given me that one night. We should have moved on and resumed our normal lives today. We were meant to be alone. You should not have left that evening. You should have known me. Don't think I wouldn't mind if you cheated on me. No matter how often you do it, I did not cheat. I've told you this before. I did it. I did not sneak behind your back. Whether you informed me or not does not matter. The fact that you hadn't and were with someone else constitutes infidelity. Besides, I never granted you permission. I told you not to do it. You did it anyhow. I never wanted this. I just wanted one night. And then we could be together indefinitely. You are aware of this. You're the only man I've ever loved. There was never any affection for him. Besides, the night wasn't really good. He was selfish and not nearly as big as you. So why did you marry him? You divorced me. Of course, I did not love him, but I like him. After you departed, I did not want to be alone. I believed I could love him, but I couldn't forget you. I did all of this to you because I was angry that you abandoned me. I still love you, but you didn't want to speak to me after one night. I knew you were all I needed, and I would never date another man again. Why did you cheat on him? Because he was a failure in bed. I believed I could train him, but he refused to listen to any guidance. When I couldn't take it anymore, I discovered a few of other people who could genuinely make me happy. I had no idea Carly knew anything about it. Even if I knew she knew about it all, I never thought she'd throw me under the bus like that. I feel bad for you. We had a fantastic marriage, but you abandoned it for one mediocre night. I believe there is no chance. I couldn't stop laughing. Not right now, but heck no. First and foremost, even if I weren't married now, what you did by turning my children against me ended any chance of us ever getting back together. Now I'm married again to the woman I adore, and I have another daughter who I adore, the best I can. Provides courtesy when we are in the same location and at activities involving our children and grandchildren. Fortunately, the song is in tune. I did not speak to her again that evening. She couldn't afford to pay her mortgage, so she sold the house and moved into a modest apartment. She had enough money from the house to live on if she was cautious from time to time. She dated friends, but as far as I know, she has never been in another relationship. Clearance eventually ended up living alone. Carly and Bobby shared a long and loving marriage. They had 3 children, 2 boys and a girl. Josh also ended up marrying a nice girl. They have 2 daughters. As far as I know, none of them cheated on each other. There are others who say I should have exacted retribution on Kayla and Clearance. I couldn't really cause them any harm without going to jail or being hit back. I resolved to simply move forward and live my life to the best of my ability. As the saying goes, the best retribution is a life well lived. I done so and let karma handle the rest. Karma is a clearing, and Kayla was not burned, but they did not escape unscathed. I have nothing to do with this anymore, but I still feel happy. My family consists of my wife, daughter, and 2 other children. Again. I am surrounded by individuals who adore me. Do I have a good life ready? Daddy inquired of my daughter. No, Father is actually prepared to let his daughters leave. But I am honored to do this for you, I said. The doors opened, and music started to fill the church. I took a stride, starting with my left foot, and proudly began walking my daughter down the aisle. My wife took her seat of honor in the front row and smiled broadly. I joined her after completing the final necessary honor for my daughter. "Don't worry, Dad. I'll get through this today. I spoke with Carly and I will do it right the first time," Jenny reassured me.